That's right. We're doing it live.
We're doing it live. Fuck it. We're doing it live. We have to bleep that out.
Yeah.
At least it's in the first 10 seconds.
Yep.
You blew it.
Welcome, everyone, to the announcement of the nominees for the 2022 Stray Pixels Podcast of the Year Awards. I am your host, Colin Buchanan, game producer extraordinaire, and definitely not a raging charlatan who pretends to be one of the masses.
Mhm.
And the nominees go to my co-host, staff writer Nathan Mejia, and Noisy Pixel intern Wade Hilton. And the winner is not going to be announced for another month because it has to be surrounded by a bunch of advertisements. How are you guys doing this week?
Doing good. My Bayonetta review just came out today. It's getting favorable comments, and I found out the next game I'm going to review, and I'm pretty excited about it.
I'm doing good. I'm just following the Pokemon hype at the moment, but I haven't picked up a review in a minute. But I think
I haven't either.
I think my last review I did was Ghost Song.
It was,
which is a big contender for my personal game of the year.
It's kind of funny because for a while I was like the resident person who did all the Humble Games, and now this year I've fallen behind because I haven't been asked to review them, even though I own all of them.
Yeah.
Because for some reason I have an uninterrupted Humble Choice subscription, even though they've had plenty of bad months this year.
Yeah.
If you haven't played Ghost Song, it's fucking fantastic. It's so good.
But anyway, yeah, in case you guys at home couldn't tell, the Game Awards nominees were announced yesterday as of the time we are recording, which is much earlier than we usually do because I have a prior engagement over the weekend, which is when we usually record. But thankfully, we found more than enough to talk about anyway, especially because we're going to be able to mine an entire topic out of talking about the Game Awards nominees. So in terms of discussion of the show itself, I think that would be prudent to leave for when the show happens. Because there's a lot to talk about in terms of how the Game Awards operates, who it's for, why it's done, and what the point of it all is. But for now, I would like to gracefully encourage my entire audience to go vote for Stray in every single category. Hashtag Stray Sweep. This is what I'm living for right now. Every vote that is cast for a game that is not Stray will make my hair less blue. So I do want you guys at home to know there's a lot riding on this.
Ooh.
And
blue hair dye is expensive.
Yeah.
You're telling me. But yeah, there's some interesting nominees, there's some frustrating nominees, there's some stuff that I'm not really sure went into the right category, and there's some mainstays that I'm kind of expecting every year until we all die.
So
let's talk about it. And the first thing I want to talk about is obviously the games that are up for Game of the Year. Because conveniently, one of the big issues with this set of nominees is right here, and it is God of War Ragnarok, a game that was out for 5 entire days before voting started.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't know between the first 5 minutes whether or not it's good game, bad game, what are you doing? Why are you gaming? Don't game. You have no mind to game.
No, I've played the first 5 minutes and then played for another 2 hours of Ragnarok, and I think it has a lot of potential to break the high place I have the 2018 God of War. But I need to play more. The reason I think it got into the Game Awards at all, and I'm just spitballing here, the fact that every big name in the industry got an early copy of it.
Yep.
We didn't get an early copy.
No.
We didn't get a copy.
Yeah, I was gonna say, at this point I don't think we're doing a review of it at all.
I mean, I could. if no one else is doing it and no one else is playing it,
Go
I
for
could.
it. Pitch it to
Yeah.
the boss.
Pitch it to boss man. Yeah.
But yeah, it shows the state of the Game Awards when standard players don't get to play a game for more than a week, in this case less than a week, before being told it's the best game ever, which we're reviewers, we review games. It's our job to tell people good game, bad game. But like for the general masses, I feel like they should have just given it to this, given Ragnarok to next year's.
Well, that's also the issue, though, is because I think their stipulation says it has to be, especially for Game of the Year, that it has to come out that year. So it coming out so late in 2022 makes it automatically ineligible for it to be 2023's Game of the Year.
I mean, this is also kind of why other award shows have specific cutoffs for when things like have to release in order to be eligible. And I do think that like there really should be a 2-week buffer between a game being submitted for eligibility that year and the announcement of the nominees.
Yeah.
And I do get that that's frustrating because it would create recency bias, because I think God of War is much more likely to win this year than it would be next year when it had been, an entire year since a lot of people had played it. But I also think that like this Game of the Year nomination list is kind of fascinating to me. And like, so dropping the bit for a second, so there are 2 games here that I would say were probably a lock for this list, just based on name recognition alone, and that's obviously Elden Ring and Ragnarok. There's a couple outliers here. Obviously, Stray was not universally beloved, even though I think it should have been. Plague Tale Requiem is kind of an interesting case because it has because of its rocky launch and all the issues with the game being broken when it came out.
Yeah, I was gonna say, did it get its ass beat in its reviews for a little while?
It's kind of a weird, like, I feel like they probably had decided that this game was going to be up for this award just based on the inertia from the first game being like an absolute critical darling. Then you have Stray, which Stray is up for a lot of awards, some of which I don't think that it should be up for, but I voted for it anyway. Game of the Year is kind of an interesting one to put this into because of how divisive it was, and I don't think it's actually going to win, but I am blindly pushing forward with hashtag Stray Sweep regardless. The real weird one here is pretty definitely Xenoblade Chronicles 3.
Only because you're a renowned Xenoblade hater.
Well,
but out of a lot of the Nintendo games that came out, I love Legends Arceus, which I think would have been the only other Nintendo competitor for Game of the Year. I think Legends was a phenomenal game. But if you had to give it to a Nintendo game, any Nintendo game, Xenoblade is a fantastic game to get it.
So I think where he's coming from, though, is that Xenoblade, it has always been a very niche series.
Xenoblade Chronicles 3 probably sold a fraction of what any of the other games on this list did.
I mean, it was the best-selling Xenoblade game, I think. I don't know how much that
does not mean much.
It doesn't mean much, no. Xenoblade is a pretty niche sale, but the only reason, like by that criteria, the only reason Stray got so much attention is because PlayStation Plus players got it for free. Like they're Stray.
Well, no, I mean, I think that Stray already had a lot of eyes on it because it was announced at the PS5 announcement showcase.
That did well. But it says a lot about Xenoblade 3 that it was announced and then very shortly released. It was one of the rare instances I've seen a game move up its release date.
Yeah.
Because it was supposed to be released this month or next month or October or something?
October somewhere, yeah.
It was supposed to be released in October and it was released in September instead.
Which screwed over another game. I can't remember which game it was.
Was it the
Uh,
The Shin Megami Tensei game.
no, it definitely wasn't that. It was one of the games I was excited for.
Ah,
I do remember this happening. I don't remember what it was.
because I remember screaming about it. Essentially, I think my word is, and then they fucked us. They fucked us like they did Amiibo Festival.
The other weird one on this list, it's not that weird. I also think that it's probably here off of inertia from the previous game.
Yeah.
Is Horizon Forbidden West. Not that it's not a good game, but I feel like Forbidden West came and went so quickly that
it also launched against Elden Ring.
I'm sure a lot of people looked at this and were like, "That came out this year?
That did come out. Yeah. I kind of did the same thing.
I forgot about
because
that.
I was late to the Horizon party, so I'm about maybe halfway through Zero Dawn, and my partner has played Forbidden West and is a good chunk of the way into it. And aside from graphical improvements, because of course there are, I don't see too big a difference. So it didn't really to me as an outsider looking at the game, it didn't jump up on anything gameplay wise or theming wise. I'm sure I'm wrong. People can tell me all day that I'm wrong, but that doesn't mean it's bad. I'm not saying it's bad. I love Zero Dawn. Zero Dawn is a wonderful, fun game, just good all around ROM. But it came up against, I think the reason it just came and went, because I hear people talking about it even before the nominations. I heard more people talking about it again. But it came up against Elden Ring, which is a death knell for anything this year, is to go up against something like Elden Ring.
So there was a lot too, because there was also a lot of game talk about it, and we had the infamous kind of bad model where a fan put caked on makeup on Aloy's face, and they kept using just a really bad photo of Aloy. So there was a lot already with negative press going on with it, because we were in the middle as a community, I suppose, not the Noisy Bits community, but the gaming community as a whole, in this anti-woke.
I mean, clearly it could have been worse. She could have been played by a black actress.
And instead she was played by Anthony Birch's renowned DM.
To be clear, I am referencing the Halle Bailey in the Little Mermaid trailer getting AI replaced by a white woman by a racist bigot who was banned from Twitter immediately afterwards.
But how unfortunate is it to you that you share your name with fucking Halle Berry? That's got to be some major fucking confusions at first.
I was confused the second you said that, because I was trying to think of what the fuck she did anything recently, and then you mentioned the Little Mermaid. Oh, that one.
So the other thing with Forbidden West is, and we talked about it at the time on this podcast. Horizon Forbidden West came right in the middle of a renewed debate over the PlayStation Plus versus Game Pass approach, where people were mad that they were going to have to pay actual money to play a video game instead of getting it for free day and date, because Microsoft is willing to burn as much money as it takes to take over the world.
And Forbidden West was the first game where they weren't going to give anybody a upgrade path. It was you either bought the PS4 version or you bought the PS5. No upgrade.
Well, no, they were going to do an upgrade. It was just going to cost $10.
No, what wasn't it that they said that this was the last game they'd ever do it for?
So they said that this was the last game that was ever going to have free upgrades.
Okay.
And it's actually kind of a weird case study, because if you go to retail, the PS4 and the PS5 version still have a $10 price difference, even though the PS4 version is effectively the same thing.
Yep.
Which, it's a later topic, but there's definitely performance differences. But that aside.
Well, no, I'm saying the PS4 version of the game entitles you to a PS5 copy, but still costs $10 less than the actual PS5 disc. It only has the PS5 copy.
So even if it was at the $10 priced game, you would still be getting a better deal buying the PS4 copy, because you would be getting two copies of the same game. It's very weird. Horizon Forbidden West had a very unfortunate just time all around, and I think, like you said, it didn't do quite enough to differentiate itself from its original game. From an outsider looking in, it looks very much the same, which is kind
Mhm.
of that
And
that
obviously, I don't know,
popularized
like,
Ubisoft style of game almost.
Yeah.
yeah.
Which it's not as boring as an Ubisoft game can be
Oh, no, no, no,
sometimes, but looking in on it, I was like, yeah, even I still don't feel like the need to really play it yet because I'm like, oh yeah, I've played this game already. Kind of the same way I felt about Last of Us Part Two, and God of War Ragnarok a little bit, but I'm really more invested with that in the story, which is where it's kind
Yeah,
of
and
better at.
that's a strength that a lot of games that are up for Game of the Year,
Yes.
as far as whole experiences, the only ones that tell a cohesive, quick story are God of War and Stray. I don't know A Plague Tale. I haven't played the
Well,
first
I
one.
mean, God of War is still like 30 hours long.
Yeah, God of War today
Compared to Horizon, which is over 100 if you do everything, and Elden Ring, which to this day still has people finding shit to it.
Yeah.
You have that and Stray and Plague Tale and Xenoblade, which is also, if you do everything and for the cohesive story, is 150, 200 hours and is getting a like more DLC with more story.
Yeah.
So like when you look at the nominees for Game of the Year, you have huge investment, moderate investment, shorter investment, and I can't say anything for Plague Tale. I don't know.
I think the first Plague Tale was pretty decently sized. I think it ended up being around a 20-hour game or something like that.
So there's 3 games on the nomination that will take a month or more to perfect if you're a working person with no time. And then you have God of War, which even a working person can beat in a couple weekends, and you get most of the story just through like the driving parts of the story are through the main actual plot. You don't have to like explore and do all this extra shit to get all these little nuggets that build into a major plot.
Yeah.
So I'm with you in that it's kind of unfair that Ragnarok got nominated, but at the same time, it's probably one of the stronger nominees for a casual person.
Well, I mean, like, sorry, Nate, go ahead. If I don't want to step on you.
No, go ahead. I wasn't really about to say anything.
Well, okay, so this set of games makes up the majority of the nominations of the entire show.
Yeah.
Which is kind of frustrating. But one thing that I do want to highlight, skipping forward, because obviously we do not have time to go category by category and it would get very redundant very quickly. I want to skip forward to the nominees for Best Performance, because literally the week after Nate and I record a podcast and I go on at length about how good Christopher Judge and Sunny Suljic are as Kratos and Atreus, they are both up for Best Performance of the Year.
Yeah.
For God of War Ragnarok.
Yeah. Right next
Go
to
vote for Sunny Suljic.
Yeah, it's weird because they're right next to Ashley Birch. I'm not going to keep with the Anthony Birch joke that Ashley Birch, who is in Forbidden West, and then Immortality and A Plague Tale Requiem. I guess the 2 leads of those games.
Again, I assume that Plague Tale Requiem, like, it's good, but I have to assume that like this is also partially here on inertia from the first game. Charlotte McBurney was fabulous in both games, so I don't have any issue with her being nominated. I have a clear winner here, and it is the one that is literally a child and is nominated for this award with a bunch of adults.
I will say that his new that new headshot, he does not look as much of a child anymore.
No,
he's very clearly like a teen.
He's become a Stranger Things kid.
Yeah, essentially.
I didn't want to say it. I had the exact same thought looking because I just have it on my phone. And I think because I know, if I know nothing about Plague Tale, I know even less about Immortality, so I can't really speak on that. But from what I've seen of A Plague Tale, because I've seen like clips and whatnot, the performances are powerful. Like that's one thing this year. I feel like this year was good overall for games, but there aren't any mega hits in my mind. There aren't any clear holy shit best game ever kind of entries. But the
I think Elden Ring is
performances-
probably going to be that for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Elden Ring
But
is
again,
that
I
for a
think
lot
it's
of
their
If
people.
by
only
default.
because of its scope, right? Because
Yeah.
Elden Ring's gigantic. But as far as performances, just the little bit I've played of God of War and what I've seen of Forbidden West and the little bit I've seen of Plague Tale,
Mhm.
like these are legit like blockbuster movie quality acting and emoting. And I guess I'm a retro kid, so it means
Yes.
more to me. But like you never see things this powerful, like scenes and acting this powerful in games generally. I'm not saying that it didn't happen before, but like you said, Atreus and Kratos are just so intense, and it's almost hard to imagine that you're actually playing a game and not watching a movie or just seeing real people do the thing.
Huh.
So these performances are incredible.
What?
But yeah, I think Atreus will win this one, Sonny, for sure.
What, Nate?
Skipping ahead a little bit, because I was just kind of bruising the thing, thinking about what to talk about. I have another topic because it's about a game I really love. But Nabillion here is on for Content Creator of the Year.
Yep. Go vote for Nebel.
Yeah,
Go vote for Nebel. He deserves it. He basically he retired very recently, if you guys did not hear about that. But he is and was always the man of the people. He didn't wasn't able to get enough support from the people at home to continue with the level of coverage that he was providing on Twitter. And he recognized that and decided to step down from the business. But I think that we should honor everything that he did by voting for him for this award, because let's be real, like a lot of the news that Noisy Pixel covered, we heard it from him first. He had his ear to the ground more than really anyone else in the business, except for maybe Jason Schreier.
And looking at the list of nominees, I don't like. I've heard the name Carl Jacobs. I know who Ludwig is.
A lot of people are frustrated about certain people that are snubbed from this award.
Yeah.
Once again, Scott the Woz.
Yeah.
It's of course a popularity contest. People are
Yes.
nominating who they think deserves it.
What's even funnier is that Scott the Woz is a very, very popular, like as popular, I think, as Ludwig. So it's really weird that he's just not here.
Didn't they have like dozens more nominees for content creator than
it almost
like
makes
last
me,
year?
I mean, it almost makes me wonder if he like turned it down. Like if they told him, "Oh, you're going to be a nominee," and he turned it down, because that seems like something he might do.
Yeah.
He also he took a lot of this year off.
Yes, he did.
So
he did.
I would not be surprised if he was like, but I didn't even live up to my last year's output this year. Why should I get this award?
Yeah, and he very famously apologized for making a late Halloween special that ended up being a 2-hour long movie.
But on that list, I see 4 people who make an actual killing financially through their content creation. And then I see Nibble, who was underappreciated. Let's face facts. Like, we appreciate him as like industry people because he was doing a better job than any of us could ever hope to do. But also, he wasn't supported monetarily doing so. So looking at this list, not only did he impact a lot of content creators like us who do reviews, he might not have made content aside from news, which is content. But I saw a lot of people arguing, oh, he's not actually a content creator, et cetera, et cetera. But out of everyone, it's wonderful that he got the notoriety of being nominated. But if he does win, that will cause more people to look at him and more people to reach out to him. And maybe he might get some of his passion projects off the ground with the support people give him from even just this nomination. He's probably
Mhm.
being bombarded by partnerships from various companies. I'm sure
Well,
that's happened already.
Well, it
But he might
depends
be.
because he shut down his Twitter entirely almost, I
Yeah,
thought.
it's locked.
Yeah.
He has basically left his Twitter intact, but it's locked, and that's specifically so that no one else can take the name and
Mhm.
pretend to be him.
Right. Can you not like message or like post on a locked account?
No.
No,
Not at all.
not
Okay.
at all.
So
um,
people might have contact info for him otherwise, but I'm sure there are ways to find him.
yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. And of anyone, like I'm sure he could find a job actually working in the industry
Mhm.
because IGN pointed out that he had left, and like their writer was upset about it a bit. Like I'm sure he has jobs waiting if he wants them, but
Absolutely.
I think out of everyone on this list, the one who could benefit the most from being crowned content creator of the year, I think it's him.
Yeah. I think it goes to show though the only two people I knew about on this list is Nabillion and Ludwig. And only Ludwig slightly. I think because he might do some stuff with Alpharad every once in a while. And
Yeah, I've
that's
seen
it.
him with Alpha Rad. I've seen him with a few people,
Which
but
unfortunately, even that content creator group is getting to a point where it's very incestuous.
kind of a circle jerk of
Yeah, it's very much, it's their friends and only their friends, and it's fine. I get
yeah,
it
for sure.
because that's the people you have a thing. But after a while, I just kind of like, whatever. I've seen this person collab with this person 1,000 times by now. But moving on to the games that I think is an interesting category here. We're going back. I think it's number 4. No. It is number 9. No. Games for Impact, number 8.
I was
This
looking at that
makes
one
me want to
too.
die. This makes me want to die. I hate that these games are supposed to be in competition with each other for doing a thing that we should want from our entertainment in general.
Yeah, and the big one here for me is I Was a Teenage Exocolonist. That game kind of came out. Nobody talked about it. Nobody cared. I think I tried to get Semi to do a review of it because I was busy for some reason. Just
I think that
nothing.
was even before me, before I joined Noisy Pixel.
Yeah. And that game, actually, I'm going to talk to Ryuji. I think I want this game as my picture for Game of the Year because I love it so much. It tackles so much about sexuality, about war, how society can or can't function together. It tackles so many different hard-hitting stuff and it's all wrapped into a very quick game to play. I think one run through of the game takes about 8 hours, but its strength comes in the fact that you do multiple run throughs for multiple different lives. You only play until you're about 19, 20 years old, going from 10. And I had a run through where I helped my girlfriend just genocide all living creatures on the planet we lived on.
Jesus Christ.
I didn't mean to, because we were scientists, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I'll help you with your science project." And the next thing I knew, that's what was happening. So it's a very and I stood up for almost 2 days playing, just nonstop.
I will say I'm a little biased on this particular list because I actually reviewed Endling.
Yep. I was gonna say that was what I ended up voting for.
Endling I thought was an incredibly powerful game, especially considering the lack of dialogue. It was very touching, very moving. I'd call it impactful, but I've heard of Citizen Sleeper, but outside of that, that's the only. Endling is the only real game I've actually seen in action, and I played it.
Yeah. I know As Dusk Falls, I think was a live actor game,
Mhm.
Mhm.
where they just kind of put a kind of a stylized artwork over them, artwork, but art style
Yeah,
over them.
shading. Yeah.
Yeah, which I think that's kind of weird that got here, but I haven't played it yet, so it might be like an amazing game. I'm not sure about a Memoir Blue either. I just knew that I was a teenage at the Colossus. This is the only category that game is going to be in, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And it's just going to suck, but I don't think it's going to win, mostly because I don't think anybody played it or even heard about it.
I mean, yeah, when it came to the indie games category, especially like just the best indie,
Mhm.
aside from obviously Stray being on it, and I'm sure Tunic, which is a huge fan favorite.
Mhm.
Neon White, I've seen a lot of people talk about.
Yeah.
But a lot of the lists here are the same 3 or 4 games that are going for Game of the Year,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
over and over again. Ragnarok and Horizon and Elden Ring in particular are in like almost every single category.
Yeah, yeah. Except for the
But
ones that it really wouldn't make sense in.
the I know we have very short time, but the last thing I think we can talk about is most anticipated game,
Oh, that's Hogwarts
which
Legacy.
I will kick you.
Kappa Kappa
Leave meeting.
L.
I mean, it's still Final Fantasy 16 for me. I suspect that the fight is probably between Final Fantasy 16 and Resident Evil 4.
Yeah,
I don't know
RE4.
that Zelda actually has. I mean, it won last year, but also the fact that it won last year and this year it's also
Still not
nominated, but
out,
with
yeah.
a title, is very, very silly.
Oh yeah. It's also up against Starfield, which,
Starfield is not winning. Starfield has no chance here.
are you sure? Because like BioWare fans are crazy. Not BioWare, excuse me,
BioWare is
Bethesda
not
fans.
involved in Starfield. What are you talking about?
I said BioWare because I thought I meant Bethesda. Bethesda fans are
and no one's
Bethesda fans
excited
are
for
pretty
this
crazy.
game. Like, I think we all saw that preview, that trailer, and we were all just like, oh, so it's just literally exactly Fallout 4 in space. Okay, got it. Moving on. Really quickly, I do want to mention 2 of my probably underappreciated picks, which are Live Alive for Best RPG. It is the only award that it is up for. That is a crime, and it's up against a lot of competition, most notably Xenoblade 3. Please go vote for Live Alive. And also, speaking of crimes, my actual game of the year that isn't a re-release is Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga, and it is only up for 1 award, and it is Best Family Game, and it is up against Splatoon 3. Please go vote for Lego Star Wars. It's so good.
It's
I
also
wouldn't even
against
call
Kirby.
Yeah, what? How the hell did Kirby not get? Ugh. I don't think Splatoon's a family game. I'll say that. I don't think Splatoon's a family game. But yeah, like it's definitely like I love Mario plus Rabbids. I love Kirby. Like every game on this list, like on the family games list, Switch Sports, it's Wii Sports, but Switch. Moving on, but like
Lego Star Wars.
I love Kirby, man. I have to give it to Kirby. I have to give it to Kirby. Kirby's my boy. I should be wearing my Kirby shirt.
All right. So we are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we are going to talk about the 2-year anniversary of the 9th generation of consoles and where we stand here as opposed to, the last couple, because a lot of people seem pretty unhappy about it. So we will be right back. Welcome back, everyone. In the first half of this week's episode, we discussed some notes we had for the nominees for the Game Awards this year, #StraySweep. And in the second half, we're going to discuss a question that has been floating around for the last week or so, ever since the 2-year anniversary of the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series S and X. And that is, has this generation even started yet?
Ooh. to put it in plain words, yes and no. Performance wise, I feel like the games that are coming out, maybe not exclusively for PS5 or Xbox Series X or what have you, they might not have console exclusives on quite the level we would have seen from like PS3, PS4, Xbox 360, Xbox One, etc. But I feel like the quality of the games graphically, options wise, God of War shows how accessible games can be. I feel like as far as that's concerned, and the decrease in like loading times in particular, I feel like from that angle, yes. From exclusives and new kind of content, not as much. It's hard to say.
I will say I think I pretty much disagree, except for loading times. That's the biggest thing, is that we swapped from HDD to SDD or SSD, excuse me. Otherwise, I think graphical improvement from PS4 to PS5 weren't as big of a leap as from PS3 to PS4 or any previous hardware leap. It's still abysmal that we have to choose between 4K or 60 FPS.
I mean, okay, so the like we're veering off in a certain direction here, but I will say, as someone that like very recently bought himself a new graphics card that cost about as much as my PS5, like I do understand why. And I'm talking like this is the generation of AMD card that the PS5 and the Xbox Series X use. Yeah. I do get why we are still needing to choose. I suspect that if we get a pro version, let's say in 2025 or so, I think that'll go away. But I do understand that it's very, very difficult to get 4K running at 60 frames per second. I used to bitch about this very frequently, and then I started actually looking into how much cards that are capable of doing that cost, and it's a lot. Especially when you consider how expensive the new hard drives are just on their own.
But yeah, I think my point though mainly still stands that this doesn't feel like a big graphical leap from PS4 to PS5, especially since this feels like the longest we've had PS4 and PS5 games come out that are essentially the same game.
Well, I mean, so that's kind of the crux of the issue here, is people are feeling like because we are still getting, this is definitely slowing down now. Sony has committed to God of War Ragnarok being the last major first party PS4 title, and we've already had several Sony first party titles that did not come to the last generation that are exclusive to this one. Some of them for obvious reasons. They were not going to ship The Last of Us Part 1 on PS4, even if it could have worked, because it would have been hopelessly confusing to try and differentiate two versions of the exact same game on the same console.
I'm not going to comment on that.
But it's I do think that it's something of a valid question, because you look at the game lists, and there's a lot of context that goes into looking at the list of games that we've got for both consoles, especially given how small the one for the Xbox Series is, because really the Xbox Series does not have any exclusives yet.
Isn't Starfield supposed to be its first big one, or is that even going to be a PC game?
Well, so the three major exclusives, and there really are only three so far for the Xbox Series X and X, are Forza Horizon 5, Halo Infinite, and Microsoft Flight Simulator. And I believe all three of those shipped on Xbox One. I think Flight
Halo
Simulator
Infinite's
might be the
on
only
PC.
Exception, but Forza and Halo definitely shipped on Xbox One. So I do kind of get why that entire side of the gaming fan base probably feels like, why did I
we
buy
even
this?
Yeah.
Because with Sony, you at least have Ratchet and Clank was the first major one
Returnal.
that only came out for PS5. Yes, there was also Returnal. Returnal was kind of a niche hit for a while.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I suspect that the majority of people that have played Returnal at this point have played it because it's on PS Plus.
Yes.
Not because they actually bought the game when it came out, because I think it only sold like 1 million copies.
Which, for kind of a random drop, I don't know how much publicity it got before it was.
It got a
dropped.
fair amount of
Yeah.
publicity. I was being bombarded with YouTube ads for it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
They're really banking on that being one of the killer software for the holiday season of 2021, I think.
And from what I understand, people who've played it love it. Like
Yes, it's very good. It is not
Mhm.
my kind of game, but it's very good.
as you do.
Mhm.
So I think the days of console exclusivity, with especially with Sony starting to be more forward about adding games to PC,
Mhm.
I feel like console exclusivity is coming to an end. So it's now going to be about the services provided. In which case, I know Sony has tried with the different tier of
Maybe.
PS Plus.
Maybe they tried.
They need to try harder because
They do.
their library is fucking insane. Like they have access to so many different IPs and so many different possible games that it could honestly put up a really good fight against Game Pass, especially if they start doing launches like, hey, if you have this, here's this game. They won't, or
Yeah.
at least they have shown no signs of wanting to, but they
Yeah.
have the absolute ability to. They have the absolute opportunity to actually give Game Pass a run for its money. It's
Well-
one of the hardest selling points for Game Pass, in my opinion.
Well, they also have never tried to compete against Game Pass. That was their number one statement.
Wade, really quickly, I want to let you finish your thought.
I feel like one of the biggest selling points for Game Pass, aside from like the Xbox console exclusives, like one of the first ones was like Sea of Thieves and like Halo, Master Chief Collection, and like aside from those, it's all about old like 360 games. Like I know when it happened, there was a lot of talk about the Banjo-Kazooie games and other indies and the like. But then you have like just regular indies coming out that most people wouldn't play otherwise, that help the indie system get
All the Humble
more
games, for
notice.
example.
Yeah, Humble Games. Euden Chronicle, the spiritual successor for Suikoden.
Yeah.
That came out on Game Pass.
Well, it's
and-
not out yet.
The Rising,
The
side-scrolling,
Yeah.
side-scrolling action game, like that came out and that garnered a lot of attention. Sony can do that. Aside from contracts, I'm sure that a lot of indie developers have with Game Pass, but they have the PS1 library, the PS2 library, which
okay,
is
yeah,
a phenomenal
and I
library.
agree with you, but we are also getting very far down a tangent.
No, that's fair.
Because this is what we talked about last week.
Yeah.
And I do want to set aside the argument just because like we know Sony's never going to do day and date like AAA launches. We're gonna get Stray every once in a while, but they're never going to ship their first party games day and date on PlayStation Plus because that is a tactic to lose money. Microsoft is seemingly willing to throw infinite money directly into an incinerator if it means that they get some of their market share from the Xbox 360 days back. And slowly it's working, but it's only going to continue working if they actually get games. And that's kind of where my next point is, which is last generation also started off pretty rocky. We weren't getting as many cross-gen games specifically because the PlayStation 3 and the PS4 are so different from each other in the way that they are built that it was actually really difficult to do cross-generation games. But Microsoft's killer app for the launch of the Xbox One, and this is going to be a name that neither of you have definitely heard, since 2014 was Rise: Son of Rome.
Oh yeah, I remember that game. It got
I
talked
remember
about
it. Yeah.
for like 2 weeks, and then everybody shut up about it.
It was very pretty. It was also full of microtransactions. It was short, and everybody hated it. And I will give you that Sony had their own competing game that also had complaints of it being too short in The Order 1886.
Yeah.
But Rise: Son of Rome was like the thing that Microsoft was really seriously banking on when the
Mhm.
Xbox One came out, which made it a huge disappointment when the game turned out to be shit.
Rim shot, I think, is the term I used when I heard about it. Just swoosh, nope, boom, off,
mean,
gone.
We also remember that PS4 gave us Knack.
Yes, no, let us never forget Knack. Ultimate gaming masterpiece.
It's a Knack's to piece, a Knack out of 10.
Like Sony did have plenty of games, but I also feel like they were kind of forced. They were in a position where they were forced to leave the PS3 behind really quickly because it was going to be way too costly to try to do the cross-gen approach that they have this generation. So
Yes,
in the first
yes,
2
yes.
years, we got Knack, we got the Playroom, which was the first Astro title.
Yeah.
So it was free with the purchase of a PlayStation camera. We got Killzone Shadowfall, and we got Little Big Planet 3, Drive Club, and Infamous Second Son.
Yes, yes, yes.
And also The Last of Us Remastered, which came free with PS4s for a very long time.
Yeah. Yep.
Because obviously the original game came out like literally months before the PS4 did.
Yeah, and looked like an early stage PS4 game at the time when it came out originally.
So go ahead.
I feel like the hardware jump is notable between 4 and 5. Not as notable as between 3 and 4. But I this is coming from somebody who knows pretty little about computer hardware in general. I feel like the 5 has potential, but it also came out during a very rocky turn of the decade.
Yep. Yeah, that's kind of the other context.
Yeah, that is the other context.
So a lot, and this is going to continue to be true going forward, of decisions that were made in the game development world were impacted by two things that fed into each other, which were the COVID-19 pandemic and the semiconductor chip shortage, that both of which happened at the turn of this decade, and basically are the deciding factor in how many consoles at least Sony was able to sell. For a good long while, you almost certainly know this if you're listening to this podcast, but for a good long while, especially towards the beginning of the pandemic, Animal Crossing New Horizons comes out and the Switch suddenly becomes very hard to find. It becomes a product that you have to know when your local store is getting in and like be ready to put it in your online cart and check out immediately. I worked for the Target Electronics desk at the time. I was there. But nothing prepared us for how difficult the PS5 and the Xbox Series X were going to be at launch. And eventually the demand for the Series X calmed down to the point where you can actually now go into a store and buy one that more than likely off the shelves. And that happened. That really started happening where they would start to linger on shelves around a year ago, a little less than a year ago.
About a year ago.
Also, with the Series X, people didn't know about it, but stores were also holding back consoles due to the Xbox All Access deals. Which was
Target was one of those.
Which for people who didn't know was you basically just asked for a line of credit to buy an Xbox, and they just
you finance a console like you finance a car.
And it came with 2 years of Ultimate Game Pass.
It's a very stupid idea. Don't do it.
Don't finance, but 2 years of Ultimate Game Pass is dope as hell, actually.
Like, yes, I understand, but also like this literally was a thing that would check your credit. This is not worth dinging your credit score
No,
over.
not at all. Not at all. I mean, credit in general's fucking stupid.
Bullshit. It's
Yeah.
capitalist bullshit.
For sure.
But go ahead.
But yeah, like you said about a year ago, you could actually, there's a chance. It wasn't a high chance, but
Yeah.
you could walk into Target, Walmart, GameStop, and maybe find a Series X or S. Probably S. People don't like the S, but you could still find them. And it wasn't until, I want to say last month, that I actually saw an in the wild PS5.
I mean,
Just
I want to put a pin
boot to
in
boot.
the Series S. We're gonna pin that up right up here. We're gonna come back to that. The PS5 started becoming a lot more broadly available when the Horizon Forbidden West bundle came out.
Yeah.
To the point where you could find that in stock in a lot of places for a long time after inventory drops happened.
Okay.
Like they would stay up on PlayStation Direct for like over 24 hours.
Yeah. And it was very bizarre how people acted about them. Because I get it, maybe nobody wants Horizon Forbidden West, but these weren't more expensive than buying an extra controller and a game with your PS5, anyways, which a lot of people are going to do. And I get that maybe Horizon Forbidden West isn't the game you wanted, but people were acting like, "Oh, this is trash because they're making me buy a controller and a game with it." And it's like, what else were you going to?
Well, no, it's just the game.
Was it just the game?
It's just the game.
Yeah, still, but it was still only the $70 price increase of
yes.
Game
It was only the price of the game.
Yeah.
So it literally like it was conveniently for Sony a way to sell more copies of Horizon, as well as a way to manage people's demand because the scalpers kind of avoided the console bundles and it pretty definitively killed off the business because now you can absolutely still find bundleless PlayStation 5s out there, but it is so much easier to find them in the bundle that there's really no reason to go out and pay scalped prices for a console because all you got to do is pay the upfront cost of a game that you probably wanted anyway if you were buying a PlayStation and you'd have one. But that just wasn't the case for a long time. And so
for about 2 years,
while for a good long while the PlayStation 5 was the fastest selling PlayStation console, that was a margins game. That was only because Sony was barely producing just enough to maintain that number, and they were not able to keep that up for the entire time the system has been out. It has fallen behind the PlayStation 4. But it's so hard to find these things, and people get like, for a while, every time an exclusive game was announced, people that couldn't find a console yet got really fucking mad. Because like this is unprecedented. In the past, when the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One came out, they weren't easy to find, but you could go out and buy one. And in this case, like the demand is higher than it's ever been, but people just could not actually go out and buy the console. And that also meant that that there were fewer people to buy exclusive titles, which leads us to the cross-generation approach that we have right now, where the systems are similar enough that if you can manage to eke out a previous gen version of your game, why not do it? Unless you're CD Projekt Red, in which case, don't.
Or just delay the game. Please just delay the game.
I remember the first one to actually get like "this is fucking stupid" response from people was the DLC for Final Fantasy VII remake, because that is console exclusive, and people got really upset about that.
I feel that's a little bit more fair. At that point,
Zach Fair.
It's Zach Fair. Because at that point, even I had only gotten the game on PS4 because that was all that was out. So you're telling us that now, it's dependent on a PS5, and yes, I think I could have gotten the $10 upgrade path, but I spent the whole $70 extra for the new, for essentially a new Steelbook case.
I think Steelbooks are rad. I feel you.
Because I'm that kind of weeb.
But I think between the the console shortage and the reaction to something like that, it really turned maybe not even like the main AAA developers away from full sending a solid PS5 only game, but also like indie developers who sometimes are very good at making exclusives. I think that shoved them away even harder. So, like you said before, God of War is Sony's last first party game that's going to be cross-gen by their own admission. I think we're going to see a huge rise throughout next year when they start talking about games coming out in quarters 3 and 4, because they've kind of covered the first half of the year so far. When it comes to quarter 3 and 4, I think we're going to be seeing a lot more PS5 exclusive.
I think what also attributes to this is that because of we haven't had a cross-platform generation quite like to this extent. Xbox kind of sort of has had it for quite a while, but this is definitely a first for Sony, where the reason why I play my PlayStation 5 so much more over my PS4 is because I can play my PS4 games on my PlayStation 5. And for a good while, that's what it was. I was just playing my PS4 on my PS5.
With better load times.
with depending on the title, yeah, with slightly better load times.
Games have to be built for that hard drive to take full advantage of the faster load times. So there are a lot of PS4 games that just you only see like a 10% increase, which is about on par with what you'd get if you just chucked an SSD into your PS4.
So I think that helps attribute it to make it feel like, oh, whatever, because I'm playing like besides Miles Morales at the time of launch and maybe Spider-Man Remastered, like I played those games and then I went straight into a PS4 game. I think maybe Dark Souls or something. And then even now I flip-flop between a PS4 game and a PS5 game. And that's only if something catches my eye at the new release. I try to keep playing only the PS5 versions to kind of see if there's anything in it, but most of the time, like you're not seeing any noticeable difference where it's like, man, I'm so glad I got the PS5 version over the PS4 version right now.
Colin is a fellow Final Fantasy 14 player, and the PS5 load times they're so powerful,
so much better. I mean, we also know that as of 8.0, they're going to be discontinuing the PS4 version. So not the next expansion, but the one after that.
I mean, given that the dev cycle extended from like 3 months to 4.5 months for patches, I say we have quite a while before that becomes a problem. At that point, I don't think it will be. I think PS5s are going to be so incredibly available that it'll be a simple thing to upgrade. And there's a free upgrade like across the board. So like, I think it was a good approach. I know this console generation's off to a really weird start, considering Switch is in this console generation, and it came out 2 years before the others. So everyone wants to talk about like weak hardware, et cetera, et cetera.
3 years.
3 years?
Yeah, 2017.
Ugh. Oh my god, I'm old. Like, that aside, just that fact aside, this generation is a little weird. Just with how long it started to get going. But I think that once it gets going, it has a lot of potential.
Here's the other thing. I'm gonna reach up to my bulletin board and pull down the biggest reason why this generation is weird.
Okay.
And that is because for the first time, we have a console junior that has to be accounted for, and that is the Xbox Series S, because I mentioned this in a previous episode, but Microsoft currently mandates that any game that ships on Xbox Series X must also run on the Series S.
Yes.
And the Series S is effectively an Xbox One X with no disk drive.
Yes. And it makes sense to mandate that because they are the same generation supposedly. Like Switch is actually not really part of this generation. It is, but it isn't. It's actually half
It's a transition.
half PS4, half thing, and this has been a thing since the Wii. Because remember, Nintendo did do a hardcore gaming console. You never bought it.
Wii U, baby.
GameCube, baby. GameCube was more powerful than both the Xbox and the PS2 at the time.
So we all bought a GameCube. The general population didn't.
Yeah.
But also, this was the sixth generation was wild because the PS2 was such a massive runaway success that it's almost not worth talking about the other consoles.
No.
Yeah.
That's one of the points I was making when I was like, Sony has an amazing library of games for their service if they so damn please, because PS2 is a juggernaut of a console, like an absolute goddamn juggernaut.
Yeah. But going back to the point, Switch doesn't really have to worry about it because yes, it still gets games on it, but Nintendo has always sold themselves more on the unique experience you can only get on a Switch. Like, I'm not getting a Switch to play Resident Evil 8. I'm getting a Switch to play Mario and Rabbids, Kirby, SMT5.
You're just naming all the games I've played in the last week.
Asterisk.
Ruin Factory 5, those games.
But like, this became even more relevant when the other day we got basically word, like confirmation that Microsoft still wants to do their dedicated streaming console. The reason why they have not released it yet is because they have not found a way yet to get it to a price point that they want, because right now it would cost at least $130 and they don't want it to.
Which is
but
fair.
The thing here is, wow, a dedicated streaming box. That sure sounds like something that they could replace the Series S with mid-generation, huh?
Yeah.
Or
because
just integrate it into the Series S.
Well,
right?
yes, but also like what I'm saying is replace the Series S version that every game is mandated to have.
Yeah.
With just streaming the Series X version, because clearly they're all in on game streaming. Yeah. And speaking as someone that has friends in game dev, not of anything I've ever developed, and they don't actually like, they work, off to the side, but the Series S is a massive thorn in every AAA developer's side right now, because they have to develop games for it. And it is such a lowest common denominator, because the Switch does not really get multi-platform releases, not day and date anyway. The Switch usually gets often. Like a port way after the fact, and that port is generally avoided like the plague, because we all know that the only games that are worth playing on the Switch are games that are specifically made for it.
Yeah.
And so we're in this situation where we have this console that is effectively a previous generation console that they have to keep going because Microsoft mandates it if they want to ship on Xbox at all.
Yeah.
And so now we have a catch-22 where they can't chop this limb off, because all the people that were promised that they'd have the whole generation for $300 when they bought their Series S get really, really mad at them. But as long as the Series S is forced to continue to be supported, you're going to have people complaining, well, why don't these games look, so much better than the PS4 and Xbox One like we were promised? Why did I buy this whole new console if it's not going to be that much of a meaningful difference?
Why did you take this concept and this game and take a baseball bat to its kneecaps?
Yeah, I do think that Microsoft is very much regretting the decision, especially because we already know that they lose money on all of these consoles.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of how much money they lose, and it's not helping when, like, yes, the Series S guarantees that games are getting bought digitally, or the person is getting Game Pass because it has no disk drive. You cannot purchase games that Microsoft does not directly get at least a 30% cut of, assuming you're buying games at all and you're not just using it for a Game Pass machine.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
which
but
honestly,
it's
there's very few reasons
so
not to use it as a Game Pass machine.
it's so much of a speed bump for development of games for this generation
Mhm.
that if developers want to exclusively ship on PlayStation 5, I don't blame them.
Yeah.
I really don't. Like, I have a feeling that there are developers that have actively courted exclusivity contracts with Sony
Mhm.
because they know that it's the chance to get the money and they didn't want to ship on Xbox anyway.
Yeah.
Because they develop for a console so that they only have to make, effectively one working version of the game.
Yeah.
And this is a violation of that. So, do I think that this generation has started? Frankly, I do. I think that it's a weird start, but I have also had experiences that I know that I couldn't get before now. And frankly, for me, this generation started the moment that I booted up Astro's Playroom.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like I said before, this I don't know much about the Series X. I don't know how it compares to the PS5, but I feel like the PS5 has an enormous amount of potential
Mhm.
that they're still working on, and a lot of people like we don't want potential. Every console generation has had games that barely scratch the surface of the capabilities of the console.
Oh yeah.
That's happened every single generation, and the PS4 is still finding ways to optimize itself. I mean, mine screams about it because I have like the first generation PS4.
I still can't believe that God of War Ragnarok runs on PS4,
Right?
like base PS4.
Mhm.
Yeah, it runs. It might have a couple stutters here and there, but it still runs pretty well. And like, yeah, it might be holding back the PS5 version. They might have been able to do more for it, but it didn't suffer. The game itself is a gorgeous game, and games still released on PS4. While Elden Ring
Mhm.
had some loading problems, and Elden Ring didn't push the system at all to begin with, just loading size and what have you, like
Yeah.
environment size in general. Other than that, like I don't even think the PS5 has been even close to tested yet. Um, I think, like I said, the second half of next year, after like around and after Christmas, they're going to start announcing more games. Like beginning of the year,
Yeah.
you're
Well,
going to be seeing a lot of announcements.
Who's
for
ready for Forspoken?
Yeah, no. So,
I think Forspoken's going to be an okay game.
it's going to be
At
an
the end of
okay
the day.
game.
At the end of the day, it's going to be an okay game.
We'll see about the writing, but I think the gameplay has a lot of potential. Uh, but in general, I feel like this generation has started, and Sony hasn't yet taken advantage of it, but they're building up to it. I think with the system getting more easily to acquire, more developers are going to be less afraid to develop the games for the system specifically, and you're going to see a huge climb in graphical quality and just game fidelity in general.
Mhm.
On quality though, as I've stated before, I'm a retro gamer at heart. 4K or 60 frames. I don't mind if a game stays at 30. I don't mind if a game stays at 1080, or was it 1200 before 4K? All I
It would
care
have been 1080.
1080. All I care about as far as game quality, and I know plenty of people are going to disagree with it. I want the game to run well, and if it can be pushed, fine. Push it and make it beautiful. But it shouldn't decide the quality of the time I have with the game. That's just my opinion. If you can mega crunch an awesome game into a 1080 30 frames a second, will people complain? Of course. Of course people will complain. But you know what they'll complain about more? Is if you do that and the game runs like shit. And people complain about 4K, and like more than half of the people who have these systems don't even have a display that supports 4K. you don't get that. So like maybe focus on the 60 frames before the 4K.
Mhm.
But either way, I don't see that as much of a problem. Like you said, they might make up a pro version that because I know Sony did a trade-in thing for PS4s. That if you trade in a PS4, it takes off most of the price of the PS4 Pro. Like I remember those promotions at like GameStop. So they could easily do the same thing with the PS5 and make a PS5 Pro and make it just better all around. They can make it 4K and 60 frames all the time, as long as the games are developed with that in mind. But other than that, I think the games we're getting right now are great, and I'm excited for what we can get.
Fair enough. Nate, any quick thoughts?
Wow. Okay. I don't know if it's even worth saying anything, but
I'm sorry.
No, this generation has, if it started, it's barely started to me. Mostly detailing all the stuff I get. Proceed with outro.
Fair enough.
No, like
Hey,
it's incredibly valid.
at least we had countering opinions.
Yeah, it's incredibly valid to think that. I just think they've set a good framework to build on. I think the potential's absolutely there.
Mm-hmm. I want to thank you guys for listening to another episode of the Stray Pixels podcast. We post every Tuesday on your podcast app of choice and also on the Noisy Pixel YouTube channel. Do you guys think that this generation has started? What are you voting for all of the Game Awards that are not Stray nominated? Because Stray needs to sweep the entire show. I want it to win Game of the Year. I want all of these other developers to have egg on their face.
Can you imagine God of War Ragnarok losing to Stray?
Let us know in the comments on YouTube. If there's anything you'd like us to talk about on a future episode, you can leave a comment under this video or talk to us on Twitter. You can find me, Colin, at the Arcane Ranger, Nate at less than Nathan, Wade at Crepusculus XIV, that's CREPUSCULUSXIV, or the site itself at Noisy Pixel News. Stray Pixels podcast is brought to you by NoisyPixel.net. Noisy Pixel is run by a group of gamers who work hard to bring you the latest news, reviews, previews, podcasts, and more. Please join our community Discord server to come talk nerdy with us, and like, subscribe, and follow to keep up with our future content. We will see you guys next week.
Bye-bye.